What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Talk of the Tundra, your Green Bay Packers podcast that is a proud partner of the Eurostep Podcast Network and the Blue Wire family. As always, I am your host, Numac. This time, we're back with the defensive players we're scouting for the draft coming up in 2 short weeks. We only have 14 more sleeps, 13 as you're listening to this. If you listen to this like a loyal fan on Friday morning. Uh, until the NFL draft is hosted up in Green Bay. I just saw that Fox 11 up there put out a video from their rooftop cam because it's down the street from Lambeau. In case you didn't know, Jordan, uh, of the roof going up over where they all
Like the stage?
yeah, like the stage, like the roof went up over that. So that's a big milestone for getting it all
Mm.
done. So we're coming down to it. So how are you doing, Jordan? Are you earnestly awaiting the draft? Are you ready for the speculation to be done and ready for the picks to be made?
Let's commence. This is always like
The
the
worst
start
time.
because it's like I really I don't know. Like we talk about these players, or I shouldn't say we you hear I mean we are talking about it, but you hear like NFL podcasts or like it kind of gravitates towards the same crop of prospects, and
Right.
QBs are always gonna like capture attention because it's the easiest and most important position on any sports team, really.
Mm-hmm.
But at some point, you kind of realize like this is it. Like you, mock drafts have become to the point where it gets run so often that there are mock drafts to the alternatives. Like, well, if you can't get this guy, this is the other guy that you want. Yeah, I
Right.
mean,
That's what my
this is
mock draft
this is
Monday
kind of the
is.
zone. True, but it is kind of the zone that we find ourselves in, and I'm ready. Let's just get to the action.
I'm right there. I'm with you. We still got two
Cut the
weeks. That's
BS.
right. We'll have our mock draft next week. Uh,
Wait,
for
what?
for our pod next week, which is hilarious and ironic. Um, but before that, keep an eye out on the GSPN Substack. My article reviewing all of Brian Gutekunst's picks is the first part of it is dropping on Monday. So be sure to check that out. Subscribe, just $8 a month to get all of our pods ad free and GSPN After Dark, as well as all the written content we produce over there as well. So feel free to subscribe. We would appreciate it. So without further ado, why don't we hop right into some of these prospects? But I guess right before that, we got to talk about their top 30 visit per se. So as of 8:33 on April 10th from Zach Cruz, this was last updated from Zach Cruz on the 9th around 1:30. So if anything has come back since then, it has been updated. But regardless, the following players have had pre-draft visits for the Packers. Defensive end Shamar Stewart from Texas A&M. Defensive end James Pierce out of Tennessee. Offensive lineman Essa Poole from Washington State. Wide receiver Isaiah Bond out of Texas. Defensive end Michael Williams from Georgia. Center Jacob Bear from Arkansas State. Wide receiver Matthew Golden from Texas. Defensive lineman TJ Sanders from South Carolina. Offensive tackle Dalton Cooper from I can't read. Dalton Cooper from Oklahoma State. Wide receiver Emeka Egbuka from Ohio State. Offensive tackle Josh Simmons from Ohio State. Offensive tackle Anthony Belton from North Carolina State. Cornerback Siobhan Revel Jr. from East Carolina. Cornerback Jason Marshall from Florida. Offensive lineman John Williams from Cincinnati. And defensive lineman Tyleek Williams from Ohio State. So my eyeball count there is about 20. That's not their full 30. I believe they're allotted, so they'll probably have a couple more visit in the meantime. So on this on the last episode, we talked a little bit about Matthew Golden. We talked a little bit about Amika Igbuka. Didn't really talk about anybody else on that list on the last one. Uh, we will be talking about a couple of the names listed for defense right now as we get into our defensive draft, our defensive players for the draft, and who we think they could pick in the first, second, third round, some targets and stuff like that. So, alrighty, Jordan, I'm gonna let you take the reins. First and foremost, if you're picking defense at pick 23 in the 2025 draft, who is your top guy that you want to, or who's the first round prospect that you want to get. Maybe he's not your top guy, but who's the guy you want to reach for in the first?
Any position?
Yeah, any position. So like obviously the Packers need edge rusher, they need cornerback. They don't I don't think need defensive tackle, but they would be good to have some depth there depending on what you think of Carl Brooks and Colby Wooden. Um, but yeah, the three main defensive needs for him: DB, D tackle, and edge rusher. I'd say out of any of those, if you're picking linebacker, I'm gonna yell at you. But
Is not a linebacker.
but yeah, basically the guy you'd want them to draft in the first.
Well, with that preamble set in stone, I do have to admit there is someone that has caught my eye, and it's not a secret pick or a surprise, I should say. I want to talk about Derek Harmon from Oregon.
Yeah,
I think he could be really good.
I think he's gonna be really good as well.
I think you brought up a good point. So I think to kind of big picture it, I think Harmon kind of checks the box of from what his range could be within that late or early 20s kind of mix of players. Again, it's very hard to forecast past a certain amount of picks, like pick 12 or whatever it is, when we're starting into the playoff teams
Especially
mix.
this year, it's like pick 10 is where kind of the cutoff is
Yes,
for elite
it
players.
flattens and you could see any sort of scenarios, which is why they're alternative mock drafts to the mock draft.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I think one, there's just a lot to like physically, athletically, statistically, like someone who plays a very premium position as a D tackle who per PFF led all defensive linemen in college football with 55 pressures,
The
had 5 sacks.
the next highest pressures the player had was 44. He had 11 more than any other D tackle in the country.
And if you're watching, like I did, like obviously a cursory of just like watching where he plays and stuff. He's lined up all over the line. Like he's not, it felt like someone that has mastered college football to the point where he's just so athletic, so clearly primed to be a big time prospect that, you know, that's where he was at that point and that level that he's playing at.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you kind of prefaced it. Is D tackle a position of need that the Packers have to would use a premium pick on? Obviously, first round is, it's their highest available pick.
Right.
I would argue yes. And you mentioned depth guys like Carl Brooks, Colby Wooden. Obviously, this is a position group that they lost TJ Sladen. They haven't really, they're one less body. I think naturally we would look at those two, plus the fact that Devontae Wyatt is entering the final year of his contract pending fifth year option. I think the biggest thing, and we saw it last year, we've always viewed Kenny Clark as this kind of he's not kind of he has been the anchor to the Packers defensive line since they drafted him. He was very good, pretty much close to right away. And he has been a very stable, productive player for a very long time, almost 10 years. Like he was really young when they drafted him. The fact that he's signed his third contract with the team is very remarkable. But I don't think last year was necessarily a sign of things to come. I think as we will get into a lot of these prospects and kind of under the backdrop of it's going to be year two under Jeff Halfley, a lot of the guys that were within that system had either like boom or bust seasons. It was very, it felt, especially on the defensive line, it was very inconsistent, more so than any other room in Packers roster. So I think for me, it's not necessarily. I think we'd all naturally be. looking at like if you draft someone like Derek Harmon at that spot at number 23, you'd say, oh, it's someone to kind of partner with Kenny Clark and do the whole, he needs someone to kind of grow with. I would argue you kind of have to start planning for the time when, you know, you might move on from Kenny Clark, whether that's through
Hmm.
trade or it's kind of the Packers' way of they view him as a at a certain price point, and then if his production doesn't meet up, and if he doesn't meet to any kind of possible pay cut down the line, if that is the route they would go, maybe they would part ways.
Right.
And I feel like the Jair situation now is standing. I feel like as much as the Packers kind of get are proactive in these things, you just never know how far or how soon those things will come. So that's kind of where I'm standing. Of I think they could hit or kill two birds with one stone with a guy that is clearly has the makings of being a very productive player at a very premium position too. I'll let you
Right.
speak before I talk more.
No, that's right. Um, you had talked about lining up all over the place when you watch his film. He had 353 snaps in the B gap, which is between the guard and the tackle, and 188 in the C gap, which is outside the tackle. And so he played really all over the line. Very rarely lined up over center, but he still did a little bit this year. But like you said, 55 pressures, only 5 sacks to those pressures. Um, one of the drawbacks that he has is that he led, well, he did lead in pressures according to Dane Brugler's The Beast, which came out this week, which is very exciting. He also led his positions in missed tackles with 12, and that did show up on the tape a lot, particularly this year, obviously at Oregon. And so if you can just be better in the backfield, that's fine. I'm also enamored with Derek Harmon. I think the way he uses his speed to get around blocks and shoot through gaps to get in the backfield is very impressive. Uh, I was He's 6'5", 310. His pass rush win rate is about 17%. He's also pretty good against the run. Um, he's only two D tackles according to PF or with grading against PFF grades that has an 80 plus grade in both pass rushing and run defending. So he's good in both areas. And when I was looking at film and watching other people sort of break down Derek Harmon, a lot of them said that like Derek Harmon might not be the best player on your line, but he'll make everybody else better just by disrupting as much as he can in the run game and in the backfield. Like even if he doesn't get to the quarterback every time he's back there, at least he's making them scramble and making them move out of the pocket per se. And so I was a big fan of him. Uh, Watching his tape, he's very good in pursuit. Like he doesn't jog behind runners. He's always got a high motor to him, and he was always in the right spot. Like I very rarely saw him out of position to where
Over
he
pursuing.
was over pursuing or he got caught like just in the wrong space in the wrong place in the wrong space on the screen or something. And so I was a big fan. He's good at shutting blocks too. Getting rid of guys. It was very impressive. I'm big Derek Harmon fan. I'll be curious to see if he makes it to 23. Dane Brugler had him at his 16th best player. Other people have him late, late first, early second maybe. So I think that just kind of depends on the NFL scout of it all and how the teams feel and everything else about him. He could go pretty early. He could fall to the Packers or even fall even further than that. So I'd be very very pleased if uh if the Packers got Derek Harmon in the first.
I think too, like I think I'm very curious, and not that this would necessarily change team strategy of what they prioritize, because I think it's kind of set in stone. Like I think it would have some effect to what happened with the Super Bowl this year and just how, just flawless the Eagles played defensively, and it just reinforces the fact that we see in that game they invested so much in their defensive line. The guys, a guy like Milton Williams, who was one of the standout players in that game. and mauled the Chiefs offensive line. Basically, like a part-time player on that team gets paid full-time starter, changing the game salary wise in free agency to go to the Patriots. I just think we it's never been more reinforced more that even if it's someone, ideally like this has been a position or room that the Packers have obviously invested a lot in. And the fact that it hasn't quite necessarily popped for Devontae White, even though he had really strong flashes last year, he just got hurt. Lucas Van Ness, they spent the highest pick on him in recent memory for quite a while. Um, at the end, like they've gone back to the well. I think whether it's Derek Harmon or even some of the guys that we'll get into more, it's like I just as much as it would be like, okay, another defensive tackle, another defensive lineman, it just is like these guys are you have this many years to make it or to capitalize on it.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you have to pay big bucks to retain them, like you did with Rashawn Gary and Kenny Clark,
Right.
and you kind of have to keep doing that if you want to create what is ultimately a disruptive pass rush and front four, like the Packers just haven't been able to do consistently enough,
No,
unfortunately.
no, unfortunately not. So yeah, I could definitely see them taking him. Um, did you look at Walter Nolan at all? I didn't really give him a look, but I know when we talked, you said he was on your list of guys that you were looking at.
He was on my list of guys. I think I'm more cursory on him. Kind of. I looked at the usual stuff of like what are scouts saying, how
Mm-hmm.
does it compare. I think part of it just I kind of did get a little enamored with like
With
Derek Harmon
Harmon,
that
yeah,
it's hard not to use him as the benchmark, especially if he's kind of put around that range of where the Packers is selecting.
right. No, I get you.
But
I didn't really give him a look either. Like I I just didn't, frankly. I'd rather them take Harmon, so that's kind of where I was with you. Um,
I think Harmon too. I think to go back to your point too, it's like to have someone that is such a well-rounded, productive D tackle, like both in the run game and passing game. Like
yeah,
it probably honestly makes me believe that he's going to get selected higher because
yeah,
at a certain point you all these all these lights are green. And it's like why are you avoiding that? If I'm a teen that's in the teens or
yep.
late teens.
Yeah, it also could just be like fit too. Like I know the Bengals pick ahead of us. They just got DJ Slayton, so I doubt they'd get another one. It doesn't preclude them from doing that, but who knows? I think
Yeah.
they need probably line more than they need D line. So that's just that's where we sit. So um, I think the next guy we ought to talk about that might not make it there as well, but definitely could be an option if he falls is Boston College's edge rusher Donovan Eziraku.
Mm.
Uh, more of a speed rusher than he is a power rusher. He came in at 6'2" and a half, 248 pounds. He didn't have a 40, and he had some pretty good athleticism numbers as it pertained to his explosion and agility. You watch him on the tape and like watch his like highlights. He looks really good getting off the ball. He's quick off the ball, but like I said, we don't have those 40 times. Um, Played under Jeff Hathley at Boston College, obviously. Uh, Another guy that has a lot of pressures, but not and a lot of sack conversions. My apologies, as I pull up his page here in a moment. But uh, excuse me, a pass rush win rate of about 18%. He's an interesting player. Is how I'll start this. He had 14 sacks on 20 hits on 26 hurries, so a lot of conversions for those sacks. My biggest thing is that I think he wins too much with speed and not enough with power. And I'd be curious to I don't know when the last time the Packers had a speed edge rusher versus like a power guy, but my mind immediately jumped to to Jared Verse as a guy that is more of a
Mm,
speed rusher versus a power rusher. Obviously, went in the first round in the teens to LA last year. Um, Graded out very similarly to Donovan Ezuraku for their RAS scores. Jared Verse was an inch taller, about the same weight, 248 for Donovan Ezuraku, 254 for Jared Verse. I think the biggest difference in why Jared Verse was more of a teens pick than Ezuraku might be. On the bench last year, Jared Verse had 31 reps to Ezuraku's 22. And like I said, no 40 for Ezuraku, but then Jared Verse ran a 4.58 40. That's really fast. He had a 1.59 10-yard split, so right off the line, how fast is your explosion kind of thing. And so I think like not mocking them together, but it's the same kind of pass rusher in that they're not going to really bully you. Like Jared Verse can bully some guys because he has that extra strength and weight to him.
heft.
Yeah, has that extra heft to him. I didn't see that in the tape with Donovan Ezeraku. I'm really curious how he'll translate to the NFL because like obviously speed rushers exist. Micah Parsons exists, Jared Verse exists. These guys are around in the NFL. But I watched his game against Mizzou and I wasn't really impressed. He didn't go against Arm I can't I have a tough time pronouncing his name. Armand Membu, the Missouri right tackle. Um, Ezuraku was lined up primarily over their left tackle the entire game and was still doing just okay. Um, like I think he had a sack in that game and such, but or yeah, he had two pressures in that game and one sack. And it wasn't his best graded game. The next game against Michigan State is his highest graded game um, outside of their bowl game, and he had five pressures to one sack. And so I watched that game. Like it wasn't very impressive that much either. Like I think he's just in the right place a lot of the time. And so at Virginia, he had nine pressures to no sacks. Had six pressures against North Carolina um, in the second to last game of the season. And so against Pittsburgh, which I think is their bowl game, he had 14 pressures, which is insane.
That's
But
ridiculous.
and four sacks. So if you can, I probably should have watched that game. But if you can put together games like that, if you can really get by some of the smaller left tackles, I think you'll be a pretty talented player. But I mean, you think about guys in the NFL at at left tackle, they're not small. Rasheed Walker is 6'6", 324. Like he's
Yeah.
given up 80 pounds to Rasheed Walker and 4 inches, and it's just like if you can't get around them, you're gonna have a hard time because they'll just bully you and push you into the ground kind of thing. And so I guess that's where the speed comes in to get the left tackle's hands out of the way and then go inside or use your agility to get them off balance to push them a little bit. But I do wonder how that'll go. So I guess did you look at Ezuraku at all?
I did. I certainly my radar antenna, whatever you want to call it, was attuned to him just for the simple fact that he was at Boston College and Jeff Halfley was obviously at Boston College recruiting him. Um, I think a lot of your points are valid. It is he's undersized, he's super explosive. Does that match up with what the Packers do? Zach Cruz also had a very to shout out him again. He's been on top of unsurprisingly on top of draft stuff. He had a very interesting article of like looking at all the characteristics that break down like past Packers draft picks and what do they all have in common in terms of like athletic testing. Look at the RES scores. Like it's a rabbit hole of like trying to find within that Venn diagram of these guys line up with what the Packers look at historically to and what they chose in the past and trying to kind of meet in the middle of like what they prefer and who they could possibly take. And Azaraku was one of the guys that they looked at, or that he wrote about, and wrote that he did not run a 40-yard dash, and Brady Gutekunst
Yep.
has never drafted a player the first round who did not run a 40. A
Doesn't
small thing like
surprise me.
that, like it doesn't surprise me either. But it is just like this side tangent, but it just shows you how much in the weeds you get into like just looking at how this all works for just guesstimating at this point. But I think as a rocker, I think one, I it's hard not to be wowed by the production. I
Right.
think in comparison to another guy I think is worth talking about probably after Azaraku, in my opinion. You're making a
I'm
face like
guessing
you
it's
don't know who
Michael Williams.
no,
Oh, okay.
the other I
Well,
know.
we'll get there.
We'll talk about him too. But Azaraku I think is it just doesn't feel like outside of the Halfley factor, which considering that the Packers just love picking up anybody that comes for the Raiders, we should not ignore. Um, it just doesn't feel like a Packers pick at 23.
Yeah,
And I can't justify it any other way that other than to say it's my gut. But
yeah. And again, I can't think of the last time they have a had a speed edge rusher. I can't think of one. Like I maybe it's my ignorance and only having covered drafts for this is our third year now, but
well, even just trying to think of
guys they
to a
signed because
kid,
right, like I just don't know, and so
Jamal Reynolds.
I've never heard that name in my life, and so it's just like
Oh,
it's so I agree with you. It doesn't feel like a Packers pick, even though like if he's with Halfley, maybe Halfley has like is really pulling for his guy and can coach him up kind of thing, and really has that knowledge to make him a successful edge rusher. I think he'll be a fine NFL player. I just don't know if I'm comfortable taking him kind of thing, if that makes sense. Like I think he'll be a good player, but he gets washed out on runs a lot because he is
yeah,
just small and he over pursues on off the edge a lot and because he is so small, quote
yeah.
and this is huge quotes, quote unquote small, 6'2", 250 for an edge rusher when he gets going so fast that he goes to tackle the quarterback, there were so many clips I saw him just roll off the back of the quarterback because he couldn't tackle him right. And so, as opposed to like bigger guys don't go that fast, wrap up and they tackle him. And so that's kind of the trade off. I mean, he was playing against like simple teams. I should say simple teams, but like not good competition and not good
It's
quarterbacks. And
like the
he's just
non-conference games.
right, and he's just rolling off a quarterback. It's like
Yeah.
it's not great. It's not great. So if they take him, I'll be ecstatic. They have a bit of they'll have a bit of athleticism on the line, but I don't think it's like uh a huge what's the word failure if he's there and they don't take him. Like
Yeah.
that's just me. I not watching a couple 20 25 minute videos on his tape and whatnot. That's just kind of where I've landed. So, um, was there a different first round pass rusher that you want to touch on before we went to the first round corner that they might get?
Yes.
Well, you
It was one of the guys that they had visited with a part of their top 30.
Shamar Stewart.
Shamar Stewart.
Yeah, I didn't look at him because I think he was too high on a lot of boards. I didn't think he was gonna fall that far.
It's possible, but there is just the dichotomy of someone who has tested incredibly well athletically,
Hmm.
and I it's not an exaggeration. His RES score is a complete 10.
Wow.
Yeah. So I don't know what that ranks in terms of that stat bomb stat, but when I saw that, I was like, oh, okay. And then you look at he had 1.5 sacks per his 3 seasons at Texas A&M,
Yeah, and
and you're just like,
this is something that we talked about in the Discord a little bit that I guess that I think you and I both haven't really caught on to in our draft scouting yet, and it's that defenses in college do so much more different things than NFL defenses do. And I think like that's kind of the difference in like say for example Donovan Ezuraku's sack numbers. He had
Yeah.
14 of them, right? Well, when I was watching, like 14 is impressive, absolutely. And then you watch some of the tape, and it's like, how does he even get a sack when the quarterback is taking three step drops and throwing it in 1.5 seconds? And so in the NFL, there's a lot more pocket passing, a lot more time to throw for most teams. There's still teams that run pretty quick offenses that get the ball out really fast, but I think there's still opportunity for like a guy like Ezraku to do that. But then you look at a guy like Shamar Stewart who's only had a minimal amount of sacks, but tests really well. It's like okay, can he let that develop into sort of the next level to be a dominant edge rusher? And that's a great balance of how teams look at guys and how they decide um, to draft because he had 33 hurries in 2024 and had 2 sacks, according to PFF's big draft guide.
Um, so his RAS score per math bomb, I said stats bomb. Pardon me. It was unofficially 9.99. Regardless, that ranked third out of 1,802 defensive ends taken from 1987 to 2025. Or maybe not taken, but I think just logged officially. Um, Aaron Schatz on ESPN, he had a very like he has like this some raptor like metric called Saxier, which is actually really interesting. And it just takes historical comps of athletic testing to and production and college and how does that project in terms of NFL success for these types of prospects. Shamar Stewart ranks second, unsurprisingly, behind Abdul Carter, who's obviously one of the top players to go in this draft.
Yep.
Um, I just, you know, from a Packers point of view, I think you're correct. I think someone who's that gifted athletically, even with all the concerns about, well, it didn't do much to match his production in college. What is that going to do in the NFL against all world class athletes,
Right.
whatever you want to call it?
Right.
It probably will lead to Stewart. Some team is going to talk themselves into this guy is so good athletically that we have to take him.
Mm-hmm.
I just think from to go from someone like Ezeraku, who this guy is clearly, even with all the concerns about his size and physicality at the NFL level, it's like this guy he backed it up with his play, and you could say that, and you probably look at him like, well, maybe late first round is his ceiling, and someone like Shamar Stewart again has the athletic traits with his size and versus physicality, but doesn't have the production. And you'd be like, well, he could be top 10. And it's just like, this
Mm-hmm.
is it. It's all a crapshoot. It just like when I was just reading all this stuff, it's like, what?
The biggest thing for me is I want a player who I can rely on to finish plays. And like that is like a detriment for
Yes.
Derek Harmon, right? Like he had 12 missed tackles last year. Um, Shamar Stewart, according to Dane Brugler's The Beast, had a 26.9% missed tackle rate in college. So one out of every four tackles he's missing. It's not great. It's not great, especially for an edge rusher who's supposed to be there playing the run and tackling guys in the backfield or is in pursuit on runs too. Like it's not great. And so again, another top guy. I'm sure he'll be good. It's just there's questions about all these guys. That's the cliff we kind of talked about after top 10. Even before that, honestly, it's like top 7 ish. And so there's ability for these guys to be productive at the NFL level. It's just who are you most comfortable with? And I think like the Packers are probably pretty comfortable with a guy scoring a 9.99 or close to a 10 on their RAS score.
I mean,
So
that was Sean Gary, right?
that was Rashawn Gary. And so then if he falls, I think the Packers sprint to the podium and put his name in, which is just fine. Just have to work on the polishing up his game sort of thing because he's a very talented player. Yeah, I just don't know if he falls that far for the sole purpose of everything you've already outlined. He's probably going in top 20. I'd be surprised if he fell to the Packers.
Absolutely.
Um, alrighty, let's talk about a corner in the first, and then we'll get to some of these other guys in the second and third rounds. The corner I have my eyes on in the first round is Jahdae Barron, one of the most talented corners in the draft. Another guy that I don't know if he makes it to the Packers. Will Johnson out of Michigan is uh, regarded as like the highest pure corner outside of Travis Hunter, who's obviously a corner and a receiver. Um, but him, Johnny Barrett, and Will Johnson are sort of vying for that top spot and top cornerback off the board. Another guy with a pretty awesome uh, RAS, eight relatively good. It's green, 8.64, um, a 4.39 40, and just good agility and explosion. He's 5'10" and a half. Um, he's one of the corners I had to watch a little bit of tape on to really get a I had to watch more tape than I usually would for these other guys, like than I did for other guys to really get an idea of what I feel about him. He had 5 interceptions in 2024, but all interceptions aren't created equally. I think at least two of them, possibly three of them, were tips that he was just there for versus like tracking a ball and going and getting it. Uh, the two or three that he had that were him tracking it were very good. Um, he's fast and agile, as I mentioned, like fast straight line speed, has just okay agility. I think his biggest plus is he's really good uh, at breaking up passes, not getting there for the interception, but getting his hands in the pass catcher's hands and breaking him up. A lot of instinct when he plays, which is obviously good, but that instinct did bite him a couple times. Honestly, he reminded me a lot of Jair. Like he's the same size as Jair, like small, kind of better in press, and just will be in the mix, but not going to wall you with interception numbers or wall you with ball hawking ability. But he's just a menace, is kind of how I'd put it. Um, Tough time shutting blocks sometimes because he is only 5'10". He's a smaller guy. Um, and had good anticipation on screens. Like we talked last year about like Keyshawn Nixon, and then 2 years ago on Rasul Douglas when they're really good at sniffing out those screens out wide. He had a couple of those on tape well, and so I like him. I think he'd be a good addition to the group. For me, there's a guy we'll talk about in a couple minutes that I would rather go. I think I've migrated to my wide corners, my outside corners, not being under 6 foot. Like
Yeah.
it's really a problem for me when you have receivers that are 6'2", 6'3", 6'4", and your top corner is giving 5 inches on the guy, right? And for a guy like Jahdae Barron uh whose vertical was 35 inches, which is just average. It was 5.61 on the RS, the 1 to 10 scale. I mean that's okay, right? But if you're giving 5 inches, you better be able to jump out of the gym to go get the ball, or at least break it up when it comes down, which he's good at when you're
Yeah.
going against those top receivers. And so, uh, Texas played Georgia this year. I watched that tape. He did pretty good. Had a pick or an interception in that game. He had a couple, I think. I think only, yeah, I think he had for sure he had one. I think he had two, and so that's against Sensen Bennett. So take it as you may. But
Oh
um,
God. Yeah.
I I think he'd be a good, not Sensen Bennett. It might have been last year if it was Sensen Bennett, but I
Oh yeah.
forget.
It's no. Stetson Bennett's on the Rams.
Yeah, it's Carson. I think is his name. Whatever the
Beck.
yeah Carson Beck. That's who it was. Uh Regardless,
I'm
if
a
it
loser,
that's right.
baby.
If if Johnny Barron does fall to 23, I probably, if it's between him and Derek Harmon, I'd rather take Derek Harmon kind of thing. But I wouldn't be upset because he can play. Like he can definitely play, and they need some life in that room. And I wouldn't be opposed as to getting one of the top corners in the draft at 23.
I'm right there with you. So much so to the fact that one of these guys is not going to make it, and it's probably very possible that both
It,
guys will not be there in
it's honestly
23.
possible that every guy we've talked about so far does not make it.
Yeah,
Between I'm sorry, Derek Harmon, Donovan Enzaraku, Shamar Stewart, and Johnny Barron, there's a good chance none of them make it.
yeah, yes.
And it's weird that
Um,
like Derek Harmon is like the most likely to make it based on mocks and where people have him, like players going and whatnot.
yeah. I I like Barron a lot. I'm going to be honest. I like him a lot more than the other cornerbacks that kind of are within that
Than like
range.
Will Johnson and
No, not even Will Johnson, because I've
in the range in the 20s kind of thing.
yes.
Well, there's a couple of them. We'll talk about them in a
There's a
second, but
couple.
there's not a lot of them. A lot of them are
There's
sort
not
of
a lot of them, but
falling to the second.
I think a lot of that comes from concerns of other. Like, I'm not trying to piggyback off of Barron to talk crap about other guys, but it does. This is not the Quinion Mitchell, Cooper Jean,
Terry and Arnold,
Tyrion Arnold. Uh, who was the other guy that was kind of within that?
Kool-Aid McKinstry,
Rakestraw. Yeah,
Ennis Rakestraw. Wasn't the cornerback drafted last year where there was a
it's
lot of really good ones that were in the 15 to 25 or
it's a very different
35
flavor
range.
this year.
Yeah.
It's like going from, you know, cookie dough to uh,
Yep.
I don't know.
I'm letting you breathe.
What's a mid ice cream flavor?
You're asking the wrong person. I like a lot of ice cream. Uh, Blue Moon.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, Blue Moon.
Like
No one.
I like Blue Moon, but
If it, yeah, but if it's not your favorite,
no, no, of course not.
if it's someone's favorite ice cream flavor, message us.
In the Discord, which you can find in the About section of the GSPN Substack.
There you go. That was not this happened organically. Um, but I look at like knowing that cornerback is a position of need, knowing that ideally I mean the Packers have had Carrington Valentine is a perfect example of a round 7, right?
Yeah, that's where he
Pick
was picked.
who, whether it's ideal or not, he was a starting quarterback for the Packers in their biggest games last year.
He's slated to be right now.
He's slated to be right now. They have done well deeper in the draft with corners.
Mm-hmm.
Is it a recipe for success? No. Nothing is to be guaranteed.
It's a
But
more of a gamble.
yeah, it's more of a gamble. But if you are willing to flip that and pick a high pick on a corner, like they do with Eric Stokes, for example, you want to make sure that you're backing up. And a lot of guys, I think like Barron is just he sticks out in that it's very similar to Harmon in that he's whether I can't remember where he ranked to Burglar's Beast. Was he also second in the
Baron.
cornerback rankings? Yeah,
Baron.
yeah.
Give me 1 second. I'll look.
Similar to Harmon in the fact that it feels like the next
He
best option.
he is third. It's Hunter Johnson Baron
Oh, duh,
because
Hunter.
Hunter is a corner better than a receiver.
He's just
If I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure that's how it works.
I wish it will never matter to me. This is just kind of like how it is. I'm going to go on a random tangent. I will never fully invested in like the top picks of any draft
Because
because
we never picked there.
one, the Packers are never going to pick there, hopefully,
Right.
and the Bucks like when it's NBA draft time.
Right.
At least right now they're not picking there,
Right.
and so therefore but it is just like Travis Hunter is. They should just say like I don't know, whiz kid, prodigy. He doesn't have a position because he can do whatever he wants to do.
That's right.
It is insane to me that he is like, well, Cam Ward is definitely going. Not, I shouldn't say definitely,
It's pretty
but he's
certain.
going. It's just crazy. It's crazy.
What?
I know it's football, but a guy that you could be like, yeah,
That
on
can play
this
both sides of
series,
the ball.
that's crazy. It's crazy.
I'm with you, dog. I think he's.
Oh my
I think he's the
God.
best player in the draft, and he could fall out of the top four.
That's stupid. It's
Maybe.
so
Hold on.
dumb.
Let me double check here.
It shouldn't say top four because I
I
think
think he could fall to four, which is nuts. Cause like
because the Titans.
if
This
you
is a
go Cam
Packers
Ward,
podcast. I
Shador
understand.
Sanders, uh, Abdul Carter, 1, 2, 3, then the Patriots take Travis Hunter,
Patriots. Yeah.
which is good for them. They would be very happy. But
I just cannot believe it. I
yeah,
cannot believe it.
listen, man, I'm with you.
It's
He's talented,
so stupid.
but
This sport is dumb. If the worst teams that are consistently picking this high, and they're like, whatever, we're a Packers podcast.
that's right. That's right.
What was my point?
Your point was that you liked Jade Barron more than the other guys around him.
Yes. Okay, yes. Similar to Derek Harmon, that it with Travis Hunter being whatever he is, and Barron being kind of this is the next best option after the lottery talents
Right.
of within that range. I just think he's so much superior versus the other corners around there versus I don't know. I just felt like a lot of the crop from like that are kind of in that late first round, early second round range. They come with a lot of baggage. Like a lot of it is just injuries. Like
Yeah.
they didn't have complete seasons. Whether it was like Maxwell Harrison, Benjamin Morrison, who I know you were saying that you were liking.
Spoilers. Damn.
Sorry, we can transition into him shortly.
We'll get there.
But I'm like, I don't know. It's what happens when you get hurt in football. It's gonna wipe you out for a couple of weeks, and even then, your season's just gonna be completely derailed by like production wise.
Right.
So it just ruins like tape stats. It just Michael Williams, who is a edge guy from Georgia, that is kind of being. I mean, Mel Kiper mocked him to the Packers at 23 in his most recent mock draft,
I
which
don't
is,
think
I
he
think,
gets there either.
crazy. I don't think he does either, but
It's crazy, but another guy that is really productive, or isn't the most productive, but has all the athletic talent, and so it's another guy
I
that I
forgot
just
to
I
bring
just
up
didn't
my,
look at because I didn't think he's gonna get there.
yeah. I wonder, I didn't bring up my Mel Kiper impression yet.
You don't
I
need
gotta
to.
wait.
That's all right.
I will do it next week.
Yep. Yep. You can do it during the draft, which will be live on YouTube, if everything
Yes.
in my life goes according to plan. I'm
What does
sure.
that mean?
I'm sure there'll be a baby Numac coming soon. And so, regardless, I'm sure. I think Jordan and Ty might do it. They'll figure it out. But if there's no baby yet, we'll have
Live from the hospital
live
is
from the
Numac.
hospital room. It's NFL draft night.
Is that your Saturday Night
Saturday Night
Live?
Live. Yeah, it is. Um, but for example, like I guess let's transition to those couple of guys that had issues per se
Yes.
that won't be in the first round for like corners because for where the Packers pick at like 54, 53 rather, it's such a unfortunate spot for them to be if they don't trade up to grab these guys because I just don't think a lot of the guys we're about to talk about even sniff 50. Like I think they're taking between 33 and 45 easily. Um, the first of which is Siobhan Revel, another guy that could go in the first, but as you mentioned, another guy that was just hampered by injuries this year. He tore his ACL 3 weeks into the season. In those 3 games, he had 2 interceptions to 1 touchdown. 6'2", plays for Eastern Carolina or East Carolina, so not the best talent he's going against, but um,
What conference is that? Yeah, I'll look it up while
I,
you
I think the
continue.
Sun. I don't really know.
I
Um,
think that's
I think so. I think it's what
is
is
it Sun Belt?
Sun Belt? Yeah, I think so, but I don't know.
I think the Sun.
Is it what? Tell me, am I
I
right?
mean, I know it
Or
just made me
Miak?
laugh. You know what's crazy? No, it's the AAC, the American Athletic Conference.
So they
He
play. Oh no, that's never mind. Go on.
he played at JUCO
He played
college.
at JUCO.
It's called Lewisburg.
Yup. But to talk about Siobhan Revel, very
Yeah,
talented. Like I think a guy that was going to be a top 15 pick in the draft. Had he not torn his ACL this year?
yeah.
He does a lot of face guarding, but he's still very athletic on the tape that you do see. He just needs to turn his head. He's a good tackler, has a lot of good footwork. I couldn't find a lot of highlights of him from a couple years ago, but uh, he's he's good at getting off receivers with his ability and just with his length per se. He's a long guy, nearly 6'2", kind of in my range of where I want my corner to be, my outside corner to be, and so a guy that really only played outside corner, and so I wonder if that causes some issues for the Packers and if they want to draft a guy that's only in one spot, can't really bump inside at all, but um, I'd be surprised if they take him just because of the ACL injury, and we saw how Eric Stokes' injuries hampered his speed. At least Siobhan Revel has his height to make up for the fact that he's because again Eric Stokes I think is 6 feet on his tippy toes. I think he's like 6 feet flat if I'm not mistaken, but lost a lot of his speed after his ACL and his ankle injuries, and so you hope that's not the case with Siobhan Revel, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Packers kind of stayed away from him because of that injury.
Also 24. He's
Yeah,
an older
older.
prospect,
Yeah,
which Devontae Wyatt they took with him being a redshirt senior,
I think so.
or either that or it was the COVID exemption that is now essentially phased out.
Right.
Um, yeah, it's like there's a lot to like there. He's a big guy, but like that is such a huge injury risk.
Mm-hmm.
They'd never really taken someone with huge injury risks that way. You
No,
could,
and that's where I go. Sorry, go on.
I was just gonna say, you could argue maybe Christian Watson coming out of North Dakota State, but I don't remember certainly not to the degree that his career is wound up being.
Right. And so I guess to transition to another guy with injury concerns at the corner position is Benjamin Morrison, a guy that I think I fell in love with watching his tape. I think he's going to be pretty darn good. Had a hip injury that uh, a lot of the not scouts but like the draft and PFF's guide all said that it's not expected for that hip injury to hamper him like for like his entire career. Uh, had 3 interceptions last year to 3 touchdowns. Had 6 interceptions in 2022. Uh, excuse me, with Notre Dame. But a guy that I'm just a fan of, 6 feet tall, has really good hip flexibility to be able to like turn his hips and grab stuff. Has really good tracking the ball. Like I liked the stuff I saw on tape. He did play 6 games this year despite that hip injury, and so this year he had three forced incompletions, no touchdowns allowed, no interceptions. Had a 58.4 passer rating when thrown at him, and so I'm just I like he's again another out wide corner. I just really liked what I saw on tape from him. It was just impressive. Again, good ball skills, high IQ. His vision was really good. Like knew how to go find the ball. Um, he has to be a better tackler, but that's really the only concern I had watching his tape.
I'm trying to find this. I know some NFL reporter had it as recent as yesterday,
Mm-hmm.
as we're recording this, about his injury history. Blah blah blah. Blah. Come on, was it Schefter? Yes, here we go. Notre Dame cornerback Benjamin Morrison, who missed much of last season due to a hip labrum repair and didn't participate in the combine or Notre Dame's pro day, will do a positional workout for teams on Monday. Um, Yeah. Anyway, sorry. Uh,
Hopefully the Packers are there. But
I
again,
would imagine
another
so.
guy I think that just doesn't make it 53 because of his stats purely, and just he's a talented guy, probably only dropping because of his hip injury. I'd imagine he'll be gone by then.
And hip labor, I mean, like
Not
that's not
insignificant.
nothing.
Yeah, it's not insignificant. But again, we I saw that doesn't uh, preclude him from being good in the future. Like they don't think it's gonna be a lingering thing. So
For his sake, for his sake, I hope.
yeah. The other guy that I liked in this range is Trey Amos out of Ole Miss. He he seems like he's gonna be pretty good, dude. 8.37 RES, ran a 4.4340. Doesn't have the biggest vertical, is 32.5 inches. Um, and he had 9 interceptions. Oh, I'm sorry, that was Benjamin Morse. Had 9 interceptions in 22-23. Um, Trey Amos had 3 interceptions in 2024 and 2 touchdowns. Allowed 6-1. Again, another tall guy for me. 13 forced incompletions. That's a pretty big number uh, over the course of a 12 game ish season. He has all the measurables. Another guy with really fast hips, able to turn his hips and get in, like, and track with the receiver. Um, he's not the greatest tackler. His missed tackles are pretty bad. Like it shows, but violent hands, man. Like his hands are all up in the grill of receivers, and if he's a guy that falls 53, I would be begging Brian Kuhnekens to sprint to the podium to put him in there. Plays outside wide corner as what we're looking for here with the situation with Jair still I guess murky as we'll say.
Festering.
Festering is another way to do it or to say it, but um he had 759 snaps out wide, 2 snaps in the slot. Like he's just not really gonna play there uh that much. Um Among PFF's big board of cornerbacks, so however many they think they're gonna get drafted, it's about 20 or so. He's ranked fifth in forced incompletion percentage at 21%. He had the most forced
Ooh.
incompletions in 2024 amongst draftable corners. Um, I just think he's gonna be pretty darn good, dude. And if you can, I don't know if he's going to be like a reach at the end of the first or where he goes, but that he's a player I'd want the draft to shake out for the Packers to get him or trade up to get him if need be. Like if we'll talk about this when we do our mock, but with them needing desperately a couple different positions, it's gonna make an interesting shakeout of what order they draft in. But again, we'll talk about that next week. Big fan of Trey Amos. That's where I'll stop.
Lots like there.
Yeah. Did you have anything on him?
No, you kind of summed it up.
Okay.
I was very. It's always good to see when PFF numbers come back positively, especially for within your own class.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, you know, it's not nothing.
Is there another guy that you want to talk about that we haven't before I get to the last guy I looked at?
Uh, no, not that I'm just looking at the edge
Yeah.
interior.
It
Yeah,
it
no one.
it's kind of a weird like draft to where day two or like round two is a weird, not much there for tackle edge rusher. Like there's Jack Sawyer out of Ohio State that could be there the second round ish. Again, not another guy I don't think makes
It feels
53.
like it feels like the premium. I think there was where was the God? This is also like everything every together between the both of us. We just see so many different things, but I just
Yeah,
remember seeing there's an overwhelming amount of first round grades for defensive prospects versus offensive
yeah,
prospects, which
yeah.
will probably be reflected in the final order.
I'm running a quick mock just for funsies to like accentuate my point that we'll talk more about next week. Surprisingly, Donovan Ezeraku fell to 23, so I picked him there. But like looking at their spot at 53. It's a lot of stuff that they don't need. Safety Kevin Winston out of Penn State. Benjamin Morrison is here, surprisingly. Edge rusher out of Mississippi, Princely Unam Uman Mielin. I butchered that. My apologies. A bunch of linebackers, a bunch of halfbacks. As I mentioned, Jack Sawyer from Ohio State, Jared Ivey out of Mississippi. Like there's stuff here. Like there's players
Yeah.
here, but it's a lot of offense that I see going about here in the draft. Like Xavier Restrepo, Cam Scatabo are two guys that are consistently here for the Packers. But if you look at like the beginning of the second, uh, Trey Amos went 41. Azarie Thomas out of Florida State, another cornerback that people really like, went 44. Siobhan Revel went 45. And so it's a weird spot for them to be. Like there's no D tackle here that for them to go get. And the edge rushers I think have questions, and so it'll be interesting to see how it breaks up. But we'll talk more about that next week when we do our mock. So the last guy I want to talk about just briefly is Darian Porter out of Iowa State. Uh,
Yes.
Corner. He's tall. He's 6'4". He's a former receiver, if you could believe it. Uh, 3 interceptions in 2024, 0 touchdowns. If you could imagine, he has really good ball skills, and he can get beat on routes when receivers come out of the break because he is just so raw at cornerback. He's played 1 season there, and so uh, I think if you could get him in the third, the Packers could take him, kind of thing, just because I think he has the ability, and I think 6'4" is good. And I think he had a couple of blocked. No, that was a different player. My apologies. But regardless, just if you can get an athletic guy like Darian Porter at in the third round to play corner and just teach him the ways, I'd say go for it. Um, he's also pretty bad against the run, so I could see him being like a dime corner for the time being until he develops. But the problem with that is that they need a guy to contribute now. They don't really have time to develop a guy like that. So just a just a tidbit there. So
I like it.
any other person you want to talk about, Jordan, or should we wrap up and leave the people hanging for our mock draft next week?
I think we wrap it up there. We'll be more in depth. Um, I do generally, as much as it's probably a faux pas or um, it's not a perfect. No one's gonna be perfect from where the Packers have selected at 23 or even beyond. But I do find there's just a little bit more to kind of chew on with defensive prospects than offensive prospects. And probably that is reflected in the fact that the Packers just need more on defense, like top end difference makers versus like we know they need a good wide receiver,
Mm-hmm.
and that's about it on offense. Like there's just so much set on that side of the ball that, hopefully that will be reflected in the final product this year.
Hopefully so. Hopefully so. So, all right, folks, thank you for tuning in to our episode of Talk of the Tundra. Like I said, be sure to check out the GSPN Substack for my article on Brian Gutekunst. If you haven't already, I believe Substack gives out free articles. So, like, if you have a free article that you haven't used on Substack before, if you sign up, you can use your free article on that should you want to read it. I would appreciate it if you did, kind of thing. So, uh, for all things GSPN, like I said, go to gspn.substack.com or follow all of the pods wherever you listen to podcasts. Go listen to Eurostep with Ty and Rohan as the Bucks wind down the regular season and start to make their push for the playoffs as they start next Thursday, Friday. And so, go check out that. Check out Cruising for a Bruising as the Brewers take 2 of 3 from the Rockies and get back to their winning ways as they head to Arizona to face former Brewer Corbin Burns this weekend. Then check out Captain, I keep calling Captain Solid. Make time for this with Adam and Andrew as well, and all things GSPN. So appreciate you guys. We'll be back with our mock draft of all the Packers picks next week. Until then, appreciate you and Jordan. Thank you.
Thank you.